Welcome to 21st Century Business and the special segment called the Wealth Zone University. You know, you and I have been together hanging out for about a decade now. And periodically, we like to just talk directly to you in what we call straight talk so that you and I can kind of get a good feel and a good depth for a topic. Now, you know, normally we have a guest, and that guest is always in some form of business because we believe that being in business for yourself is the road to financial security and your financial future. And as always, you already know our motto, to change your mind about money so we can change your financial future. And so today, I'm going to take some time so we can talk about what it means to be in business. And why do I think that's important? It's because being in business is like anything else that we do. We have to become a student of what we're doing. We have to know how to do it right. We have to understand the basics of it. And there are almost 33 million businesses in the United States as of 2021. And unfortunately, half of those businesses go out of business in their first 5 years. And that's not strange, but it's something that we're going to talk about because I think we can solve it if we know more about business. In addition to that, though, those businesses that remain in business for 5 years, only about 40% of those businesses are actually making money. And whatever business you're in, whether you're selling, servicing, inventing, whatever you're doing, the basis of you being in that business is for you to make money. And if you look at what's happening now with e-commerce and the millennials, everywhere, it's a gig economy. Everyone is trying to do business either as a side gig or as an actual occupation. And so I think it's time for us to turn those statistics around and go from half of the businesses going out of business in the first 5 years into not going out of business at all. So let me give you an analogy. Let's say you want to become a chess master, okay? You buy your book, you buy your little chess set, you read the instructions, and you start to play. Well, you know that you're way, way, way away from ever being a master, but you're getting into the game. And then you decide you want to get a little better. So what do you do next? You're still a student, but then you start to play with individuals who have more experience than you. You start to read books that give you strategy. You start to interact on a much higher level than you did initially because you now have further goals as a chess player. And then if you want to become the masters, you have to get into competition. You have to learn how to strategize. You have to learn how to lose. You have to learn how to win. But you have to learn how the second level, which we call the next level in business, the second level of the game is played in order for you to become competitive. Well, take that, let's lay it over being in business. The vast majority of us who go into business are at that initial level. We read some information on it, we might have some education about it, we open our doors and we think that we've got it all planned and we know what's going to happen, and then we go into business. The folks that I want to make sure that I talk to today are those individuals who want to take the next step in business and figure out how this magical thing is done. Okay? So hang out with me. Let's get our discussion going. Business is actually making a living from some form of commerce. And commerce is basically the exchange of money for goods and services. But the thing that I want everybody to think about is that business is also about economics. And economics is about the movement of money to develop wealth. Yeah, we hear that word wealth all the time, but in this particular instance, I want you to understand that wealth, when we talk about business, is making sure that the owner of the business is self-sufficient economically, and the business itself is self-sufficient economically. And so let's work with those definitions, okay? Being in business is about making sure that you are working in an economic vein and then building up your business so that it is an economic asset. So now we've introduced the new term, economic asset. What is that? It's anything of value from which the owner can derive benefits, whether that benefits is income, equity, dividends, An economic asset is anything of value from which the owner can derive benefits. So let's apply that to your business. You're working day and night in this company. Shouldn't your goal be, your long-term goal to turn that into an economic asset so that you can begin to derive some form of incentive from that business for your long-term sacrifice? I think so. And so what I'd like us to think about is this. Being in business and being a business owner, our job is to become an asset manager, because our job is to make sure that our business becomes an economic asset. And that only happens if we build value and we build cash flow into our businesses. And that's what we need to start thinking about from the minute that we begin to think about going into business. So yeah, selling something, servicing something, that's how we move the money around. But our long-term goal is to build something that is sustainable and that can sustain us. And think about this. If 40% of the businesses that exist after 5 years are making money, and only 30% of the businesses that exist after 5 years are breaking even, which means that they're not making money but they're not losing any money, then the other 30% is losing money. And come on, really, for all the hard work that you do in business, losing money is not the objective, okay? So you'll hear a lot of people talk about you have to fail before you can succeed in business. I'm not a proponent of that. I don't think that you have to go into an intersection and have a crash before you learn how to stop at a stop sign. You read the rules. It says stop at this stop sign. You know why you have to stop at this stop sign? Then you stop. You don't have to have an accident in order to be able to follow the rules of the road. And I believe that's in business. You don't have to fail in order to succeed. So let's take that whole failure thing off the table, okay? Because I don't believe that it needs to exist. Yeah, will you have ups and downs in business? Absolutely, because business is like life. Life is up and down. Sunrise, sunset. It's just going to happen that way. But it doesn't have to be a catastrophic loss. It doesn't have to be a catastrophic failure, with the exception of things like recessions and things we can't control. On a day-to-day basis, we don't have to fail. And how do you avoid failure? By planning. Absolutely. By planning and becoming a student of whatever you're doing. And when I say student, that means assuming that you don't know anything and then finding the resources that will educate you about whatever you're doing so that you can be the best at it that you can be. So are we all going to become Fortune 500 companies? Absolutely. But do we have to work 20 years and have nothing to show for it? Absolutely not. And what's going to make the difference from that? At the beginning, we begin to do things that make sure that we are on the road to building that economic asset that we talked about. Is that a good context for us to begin in? Absolutely. So, business, making money from doing what you need to do, exchange of commerce. But when you start that company, what you need to do is begin to look at your company as something long-term that you have to build into something that's valuable. And again, the two words that I want you to understand is value and wealth. And both of those come out of positive cash flow, which is something we'll talk about in another straight talk. What I want us to talk about today is that the sooner you determine in your business that you have to look long range and plan long range and anticipate long range, the better you'll be able to manage that business and the better you'll be able to chart the course that you need to in order to become an economic asset, which again, say it with me, value, wealth, provided by cash flow. You got it. I like that. So let's talk about a couple of things. What do you have to do in order to become a student of business? Well, I'll give you an example. I've been in business over 35 years, and I'm a pretty smart guy. What we do is basically we're chief financial officers for some pretty large companies. And the chief financial officer basically is the financial executive that helps them to strategize and grow. And our responsibility is to take them from point A to the next level, and we all get rich at the end. And we're pretty good at that for ourselves and for our companies too. But when I started my business, I thought I was a student of business. I went to all the right places, SBA school, I read all the right books. But when I started my business, I started based upon what I knew at that time. And we did pretty well. In the first 3 years, we grew, we got bank loans and everything else. But thinking that I knew business and actually knowing business was two different things, because in my third year, the recession hit, recession of 91. You're probably too young to remember that, but a recession hit, and recession was not in my business plan. I'm sorry. I looked on every page and I did not see a recession section that told me what to do when a recession hit. And so inside of 6 to 9 months, I had 11 people on staff who didn't have jobs because I had a bunch of clients who loved me, but when the recession hit, it impacted their cash flow. Their cash flow impacted them paying me. My cash flow impacted my paying my employees, and you can see the synergy and the line that took. And so I realized that being in business is not about being good at what you do. Being in business is about you being able to operate your business so that your business is sustainable, and that should be your overall goal, making sure that your business is sustainable. And I learned at that point in time that it's cash flow. Doesn't matter what your financial statements say. You can have a really big, beautiful net profit on the bottom of your financial statement, but if you don't have any money in the bank or money commensurate with that net profit, then we've got a problem. Positive cash flow is the most vital thing that you can handle. In the next segment, we're going to talk about business cycles. How do you determine where you are along the business continuum? They're business life cycles. And we're going to talk about that, and stay tuned. Meanwhile, we're going to take a break, but I want you to do me a favor. Get your camera ready, because when we start the second segment, we're going to put up a PowerPoint that's going to show the business phases of the business life cycle. I want you to take a picture of that, because it's something that you absolutely have to learn about and follow, okay? So glad you're with me. We'll celebrate our 10th anniversary some other time, but understand this, business is about you being a student of business. So hang out, we're gonna talk next phase, okay? Be back. Hi everyone. The objective of the Wealth Zone University is to change your mind about money to change your financial future. Hi, I'm your host, Don Maraney. In the Wealth Zone University, my guests and I talk about a wide variety of business, financial, and other worldly topics. We are seeking to both educate and entertain you. We emphasize that the informations and discussions are my opinion, perspectives, and ideas, and those of our guests. We in no way intend to deliver or provide financial, tax, or business advice. You should consult with your tax, accounting, financial, insurance, and legal advisors regarding the impact, application, or pertinence of any topic or opinion that we share on the Wealth Zone University. Thank you for being a part of our audience, and please continue to communicate with us through email and Twitter, because this is your show. Welcome back. So segment 2, we're going to get into the meat of the subject today. We're going to talk about the phases of the business life cycle. Now remember, in segment 1, we talked about being a student of business. The question is, how do you know when you're in elementary school? How do you know when you're in middle school? How do you know when you're in high school? How do you know when you're in college, when you're in business? And that's what we're going to talk about. The phases of business, what we call the business life cycle, are how you tell where you are in the continuum of growing your company into a economic asset that has value, wealth, and positive cash flow, okay? And so think about this. throughout life cycle, just like we talked about in school, you've got different phases that you have to go through to develop. Elementary school, middle school, high school, college. Business is exactly like that. And the 4 phases that we talk about in the Wealth Zone University are these. Excuse me for reading. It's the startup phase, the growing phase, the established phase, and the mature phase. And we're going to talk about each one of them in a little bit of depth over the next few minutes, okay? And so when you are starting your business and you're putting together your business plan, and I want you to understand that you must put together a business plan. If you don't have a roadmap to where you want to go, it's like a roadmap for those of us who are old school and GPS for you new folks. If you don't have something telling you how to get there, you're not going to get there, okay? So just starting out in business and winging it is where those 50% of the businesses that don't survive after 5 years, they're winging it, okay? So let's not be amongst those individuals. So the startup phase, here's what I want you to understand. The startup phase is where you lay the foundation for everything that's going to happen to your business for the next 20 to 30 years. Building wealth in the business is a long-term proposition. You don't start out there, but that's where you want to end up, with wealth and value in your economic asset. How soon can that happen? It depends on the economy, a bunch of things that may or may not be within your control. But if you plan to get there, regardless of what happens along the way, you'll have a better chance of succeeding it. And so in the startup phase, that's where you begin to sit down, do your research, talk to people, put your plan together. It doesn't have to be 9,000-page business plan, but it can't be 3, because you can't put a plan together in just 3 pages. But it has to encompass how you're going to make money, how are you going to carve out your market share, how are you going to establish your brand. It has to talk about how you are going to grow that company, employees, contractors, everything that's going to happen to that company. That should be in your startup business plan. But here's the secret that the Wealth Zone University thinks is going to change the game for every business owner. There is a business model that has been proven successful for centuries. And that business model is the large enterprise business. We know it as multinationals. We know it as Fortune 500. And whether we like their way of doing business and their conscience or not, the business model is a proven business model because these companies are successful. And there's a concept called Stockholder wealth maximization. And I'm not throwing big words and big definitions at you, but basically it says whoever owns the company should be those who derive the benefit from the operation of the company, and they should realize wealth from owning the company. Now, that's a good concept, okay? I'm sorry. I'm the owner of a company, whether it's a multinational, Fortune 500, or just a sole proprietorship, I'm the owner. I'm the one who's making sure this company works. I'm the one who puts the money in it, puts the sacrifice and sweat in it, so I should be the one who derives the benefit. Would you agree with that? So for the sake of our discussion, let's call it company wealth maximization instead of stockholder wealth maximization, because a lot of us don't have corporations in which we're stockholders. But the bottom line is that should be the ultimate goal for us being in business. Yeah, we want to sell a lot. We want to service a lot. We want to do a lot of good things for all the talents that we have. But the objective for having those talents and making money should be this long-range wealth and value economic asset goal, which is what we're calling company wealth maximization, okay? So startup phase. At the startup phase, you're developing a business model. And we contend that that business model should be some adaptation of the large enterprise business model. So what am I saying? There's no need to go into business and reinvent the wheel. There is a business model that is proven over and over again to work. Why don't we take that business model and adapt it to our business plan? Adapt it to our business plan. So whether it's selling servicing, providing, inventing, the working business model. We take it and we adapt it to where we want to go. And that gives us a good business model to follow for moving forward. The reason that businesses get in trouble early on is because they don't have a model to follow. They're just, I'm going to sell this, I'm going to get this client, I'm going to do this, and this is how I'm going to do it. But you have to have a structure, and your business model can become your structure. But why develop a failed business model when you have a successful business model that you can adapt to yourself? Right? Okay, so that's my lecture on making sure that you take a look at the large enterprise business model and adapt it to where we're going. And that should be done in the startup phase. So in the startup phase, we're developing a business model, which we just talked about. We're doing business planning, which we talked about also. The word business plan scares the heck out of a lot of people because they think it's a lot of work. It's not a lot of work, but it's a lot of thinking, it's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of getting advice from other individuals around you who hopefully have been in business and are successful in business and have an affinity for you also being successful in business, and putting that down in writing, okay? Because when you start your business, the minimum that you want out of that business is to be able to make a living, get a salary, okay? That's it. So at the startup phase, we're developing a business model, right? And we call that what? Company wealth maximization. You've got it. And then we're doing a business plan. Whether you like business planning or not, you've got to do it. And you should begin the business plan. Don't go out and pay somebody to write down your dream. You start the dream. You can pay somebody to help develop it and fill it in, but it's your dream. You should start your dream, okay? And then you put all of that into place. Of course, there are financial things that you have to put in place, which we're not going to talk about today. We're going to talk about planning. And at the starting phase, that's where you develop your business model and you develop your business plan. You know where you are, okay? So that's elementary school. When we go to middle school, I call that the growing phase. That's the next phase. You go from startup to growing. And in the growing phase, that business model that we established, hopefully in the growing phase, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from you to go from the starting to the growing phase, that depends on a bunch of facts and circumstances, some in your control and a lot that's not in your control. But when you feel that you've gotten to the growing stage, you've got that business model working really well for you, okay? You may have had to change it and adapt it over the years to make it a more comprehensive and cohesive and workable business model. But you've got your business model working for you, and you're following it. Now, let me digress one right here. Don't be afraid to change. If you're in business and there are things that are going to happen that are going to require you to rethink, redirect, repurpose, do not be afraid to change. Change is inevitable, okay? And so if your business model is not working, tweak it, change it, adapt it. But you need to have a business model. And when you get to the growing phase, which is the second phase, you should be following a business model that is working and working well for you, okay? Now, on the second phase, the growing phase, the most important thing that you can do for your business ever is to develop positive cash flow. So what does that mean? That means that you've got enough money coming into the business at predictable periods that will cover your obligations, whether that's keeping the doors open, paying employees and contractors, pay your obligations, and leave enough money over so that you can live comfortably, okay? That's the second phase. The third phase, which is going to require us to have a little longer discussion that we can't have here today, is the established phase. That's when everything that you did before in the first two phases, the startup phase and the growing phase, are working well. And now we can concentrate on getting a larger market share so that we can reduce our cost of doing business. That's the established phase. And the mature phase, which we're not going to delve into very much today, is where things are just running right, and then your legacy, you're expanding, you're doing all the wonderful things. You are GM, who's been in business for forever. I mean, that's where we're going. But that's what I want you to think about at the start, that's where you want to be. That's who you want to be. And that's how you want to build the wealth. The first 3 stages, startup, growing, and established. And on the screen, you're going to see our takeaways today. I want you to take a picture of that because I need you to begin to think that you need to determine exactly where upon the business continuum your company is early on and often, so that you make sure that you know when you're in the startup phase, when your company has progressed to the growing phase, when it has progressed to the established phase, how long it remains in each one of those phases, and if you're doing the things in those phases that make you prepared and successful at moving to the next level, okay? So we're gonna have the discussion at some other point in time where we go deeper into the established and mature phases. But what I want you to remember are 2 things. One, you have to become a student of business. You have to become a student of business, absolutely. Business is something that you have to learn, and unfortunately, like money, we're not taught. And 2, you are in charge of what happens in your business, and so you have to plan for it early, and don't be afraid to change, okay? I really like these straight talks. I get to talk directly to you, and we get to talk, to hang out a bit. And so we need to understand that when it comes to being in business, you should have someone like me in your business, an advisor, a bunch of advisors who understand business, who come to you and bring their expertise to you. You may not necessarily have to pay them, but you should have them. But until then, we're right here at the Wealth Zone University. We are here to change your mind about money so you can change your financial future. We will see you next time. Till then, be well, make lots of money.